Okay, as I said, try to meditate for a few minutes now. So please sit comfortably. Then, when you meditate, when a thought arises, what is that? That is the beginning of destruction. So then what we do? When a thought arises, you don't become involved in the content of the thought, right? Which is neither following the thought nor examine the thought, whether it is a good or bad, but simply recognizing the arising of the thought and just being mindful of it. That's very important for if you are a beginner. So that means when you meditate, do not think about what happened in the past or what might happen in the future. Let the mind rest and try to let it rest without any distraction, and at the same time observe this it's the natural state for as long as you can. And once your mind relaxes a little bit, then there is a nice verse by Langri Thangpa, one of the Garda master. You know this. He said, may I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers and all benefit to all sentient beings. And take, all the harms and suffering of all sentient beings, take upon myself, something like that. So this is Tonglen practice, right? Mm-hmm. The Tonglen practice of Tonglen begin with our aspiration to help others. When you start working with Tonglen practice, if you are a beginner, then you should not feel that you have this capacity, but you should have a desire to develop your ability to genuinely care for other living beings. So this is kind of important. We usually take others' happiness for ourselves, and we send away our own suffering to others. But when we practice Tonglen, we need to exchange ourselves with others. So think about all the people that you care, or living beings who are suffering, and think of all of your happiness sort of given or sent, and all of your happiness going towards them. As you continue your practice, it becomes really more tangible, more heartful. Then you can begin to expand the giving and taking to more and more other sentient beings. So this is how another way to develop your bodhicitta. So it's important. We must have bodhicitta mind before we die. If you can't develop other realizations, development stage, where the Dzogorm or Shamatha or Vipassana or nature mind, it's okay before you die. If you can't develop realization of all of that, it's okay. But at least you must have a bodhicitta mind before you die as a Mahayana practitioner. So bodhicitta is very important. So you always need to think that, if there is a situation that I can help others, big or small, no matter, through my, try, physically, mentally, verbally, if there is a situation that I can help or I have capacity, I will. Do you have that kind of motivation, genuine motivation? Not just like, oh, I have to do this. I have to, as a Mahayana practitioner, I need to do this. Not like that, but deep understanding about life and suffering of life through that sort of, right now, like maybe I don't have capacity, but when I have a capacity and someone need help, I will. So that is very important sort of commitment, bodhicitta. First, you start with that. And also, at least I don't have capacity, but I'm not going to harm anyone as a Mahayana practitioner. That's how you start practice bodhicitta. And then you make that commitment and remember that every single day. And then slowly you would develop your capacity and you really care other sentient beings. Then you will have genuine bodhicitta mind before you die. Then good. So that's very important. And sometimes, when you practice Tonglen or bodhicitta, you become tired, right, with this kind of practice. Then you don't push yourself. Then you simply do resting meditation, okay? Just rest as long as you can until your thought arise again. And then if you want, you can go back to practice bodhicitta, Tonglen, whatever. So let's do that for 5 minutes. Set up your motivation and then think about the benefit of bodhicitta and then practice Tonglen. And if that's too much, then just rest, just to relax your mind without any distraction, without any thought. Just observe your mind and be mindful for 5 minutes. Thank you. All right. Now I'm going to talk about the first Bardo, the natural Bardo of this life, and the root text from Karmalangba. It says, Jima, now when the Bardo of this life appears to me, this is the root text, if you have it. Now, when the Bardo of this life appears to me, abandon laziness since there is no time to waste. Establish yourself in the meaning of hearing, contemplating, and meditating without distraction. Taking the path of appearance mind, actualize the three kayas. Now that for once I have attained a human body, this is not the time to remain in the ways of distraction. So I will say in Tibetan too, so that you can receive the transmission. By the way, I received these Bardo teachings many times. Jima dagla jini war dunchar dindar tsela lome lelo pangshini tusam gomsam mayang lam lanju nansam lam long kosam wanjiri. Mali lanchik topi titsanar yangma lam la dopi titsan man. So the root text start with Jima. Jima means like kind of order or listen or with a tone of urgency or sadness. Many meaning. Jima has many meaning, but this means like order, don't waste your precious human life, kind of like that. So now the first Bardo is the Bardo of this life, right? So the Chirni Bardo in Tibetan, which is the time between we are born and when we die. That's Chirni Bardo in Tibet. It contains all of the experiences that we go through from birth and until the moment of death. So that's what we call Chirni Bardo. So right now we are in the Bardo, as I said, the intermediate state of this life. The Bardo of this life, it's the most important Bardo, actually. And of course, there's three, right? The nature part of this life, and then the dreaming Bardo, and then meditation Bardo. These three Bardos are the most important Bardo, because everything that happens after depends on the Bardo of this life. So keep that in mind. And that is what this Bardo is. Now, how is it experienced? Remember, I said each Bardo has three things. How people experience and spend their time in the Bardo of this life depends on their different ways of experiencing their life. Usually from birth until death, as an ordinary person is continuously under the power of negative emotions, right? Afflictions. As ordinary people, our minds are sort of preoccupied by the outwardly concerns. That is how the Bardo of this life is experienced by an ordinary person. And will continue until recognize the nature of this life, which means you reach liberation by practicing. As the dualistic mind becomes stronger, based on all these different kinds of distractions, then ego cleaning gradually become stronger. And then we believe the problem is we are more important than others. That is how we start all of this, what do you call it, separations in divisions, because I care my happiness. I don't care your suffering. My life is the most important. For the benefit of my life or happiness, then we have all this, conflicts and divisions, separations. So we accept this separation of things, and we believe this separation is important. So we act upon that. We say, this is my religion, it is the best. This is my country, it is the best country. This is my idea, it is the best, so on and so forth. All of this based on the ego cleaning. Then the problem is we are further and further and from each other, and further from the reality, further from the nature of this life. As long as this separation and division remains, then the bardo of this life has no end. I mean, individually. Therefore, our suffering has no end. Therefore, samsara has no end. That's really what samsara means, circling all the time. So usually, we say we have this great nature, right? The basic goodness, the Buddha, what do you call it? The Buddha nature. We are inseparable from it, but we create this separation. So we separate from our basic nature, the nature of life. And we are believing in our thoughts. And we cannot stop. And we like to follow in our thoughts that come from selfishness. Therefore, negative thoughts and emotions create nothing but suffering. Thoughts and emotions come and go within the mind constantly without any particular state, order. So we create all these different thoughts, different images, and we are attached to them and follow them, and then we are creating these kinds of separations all the time. Nothing profound or peaceful ever comes when we let ourselves be overtaken by negative emotions. So this bardo is very precious, very important, because what we do now, not past, not future, now, will determine where and what we will be later on. So the Bardo teachings say we should take full advantage of this situation while it exists, because it will not last forever. How many years are still to come? We don't know that. So please take advantage, take advantage of this situation. Whatever you want to do something. Karmalangba said here in his root text, at the time when the bardo of this life appears to you, to us, abandon laziness, since there is no time to waste. So, laziness. abandon laziness when this bardo of life, this bardo of this life appears to us, right? So in order to turn our mind towards Dharma, it's necessary to abandon the causes that makes us unable to practice Dharma, right? So if you want to practice Dharma, but somehow you are not be able to practice Dharma, that we have to abandon the cause that makes you unable to practice Dharma, which is laziness. You know, there are many other like confusion, hesitation, ignorance, emotions. All these, you know, disturbance keep us from connecting our mind to practice, right? But one cause that especially makes us unable to practice is laziness. That's why Karma Langba mentioned here. Laziness is a big obstacle that will prevent the development of our human qualities in the part of this life. So we have one chance, right? One chance to develop these human qualities during this life. But laziness is a big obstacle. So when we are lazy, of course, you know that, we don't have, that means we don't have energy, actually. We don't have enthusiasm for our practice. And when you think about teachings on this Bardos, you know, practice them. There are some practice you may see as a big challenge, and you think this is so difficult. Like we just did Tonglen practice. I know many of you feel like, oh, give my happiness and take suffering is so hard, so difficult, very challenging. I can't do it. Therefore, you don't have energy. Then you give up. That's what we call laziness. You become lazy because you have no energy. You feel like, oh, this is too much. I can't do it. But if you try, basically you can. I mean, it's remember, possible. Everything's possible. But your laziness makes you have no energy. Then you give up. I mean, it's true. Some practices are very, very difficult. But there's some other practice that are not very difficult. So we can really do it well. And it's so beneficial for us. But we're always being sort of, we don't have this energy, so being lazy and not willing to practice, we want sort of like change our negative emotion mind, but we just, like for example, when I try to do some procrastinations, I do a few times and then I feel so heavy. Everything is like, you know, I have no energy, and then I give up. This is what we call laziness of discouraging oneself or lack of self-confidence. I never think like when I do some prostrations, then my body and everything is like hurting, a little bit hurting, so heavy, and then I have no energy. So then I think, oh, I can't do it. So discouraging yourself. So the laziness of discouragement or putting ourselves down is when we think, I don't want to do something that is beyond my capacity. When we think this way, we begin to develop our laziness. And with that, our behavior becomes a great obstacle to being able to practice. But laziness is not particularly terrible. It's just incapable energy, and it's just an obstacle, and not just laziness. Obstacles are always there. So it doesn't have to be disappointing or very painful. Okay? If you make yourself a bit stronger and more courageous, then you are absolutely able to be diligent and enthusiastic about Dharma, especially if you understand the benefit of practice of Dharma. It gives you so much enthusiastic, about practice Dharma. So in order to make yourself more courageous, it is very important to understand the value of meditation and practice in the Dharma. Then there is another solution, sort of, like when you being lazy, or, this is what we call laziness of discouragement. And then there is another laziness called laziness of attachment to negative activities. Okay? I mean, I'm talking about laziness is, since this root text mentioned, when this Bardo appears to us, then don't be lazy. That's why. So the laziness of attachment to negative activities, this is when we are busy with worldly things. We keep ourselves extremely busy with everything. But we are lazy in practicing the Dharma, right? When you are so tired, then you try to practice Dharma for even 10 minutes, you feel like there's no energy, no enthusiasm like that. Instead, when somebody say, hey, go outside and for fun, this and this, then you have suddenly, like, you have so much energy. That's what we call laziness of attachment of negative activities. Not necessarily negative, but worldly activities, But when you put yourself into practice, Dharma practice, then you feel so lazy. And so that's, you rather, sit in front of your television, then you eat, drink, then you have energy. But when it comes, down to your Dharma practice, then you just, no matter what, you just you feel sleepy or no energy, and your mind kind of like foggy and can't think of very clearly like that, right? That's laziness. And then we always think all the time. But there's no practice. So we always think. So actually we miss the great depth of life, beautiful life. We're always thinking. We don't usually want to investigate why we are thinking, why we are lazy. We don't want to investigate this habit. We just want to ignore them. Because for the ordinary person in the bardo of this life, we are continuously under the control of negative emotions. Remember the ignorance, two types of ignorance. When we try to practice, we're not enjoying our practice. We always feel like it's so difficult. We feel like sleepy the moment we start our meditation. So what is the third one when the meditate, the bardo, when the bardo appears? First, what it is, right? What is it? The second, how do we experience? And then, how do we practice during this time, during that time, right? During this bardo. So this bardo, like the natural bardo of this life appears to us, we are lazy. So how should we deal with this part of this life? It says, abandon laziness since there is no time to waste. And Karmalangba says, establish yourself in the meaning of hearing, contemplating, meditating without distractions. That's how we do it. This is how you practice these teachings and how to deal with these situations. It tells us that when we find ourselves in the part of this life, we should abandon laziness because there is no time to waste, right? The time is flying by. It goes very quick, right? So we should think carefully and ask ourselves how many years have already gone by since we were born. Did you do anything that good, that benefits? Think about that. Every day is very precious, as I said. Life is very precious. Life is supposed to be very beautiful. When we talk about life, automatically we're talking about time. Time is very precious. So right now we have the opportunity to practice. And we should not be satisfied with a little bit, like just doing a few practice, but we should practice diligently until our capacities develop, like human qualities develop. Practice is not easy, very, very difficult. Basically, actually, it's more difficult than worldly life, successful like worldly life. Very difficult. Practice is very difficult. But we have the opportunity. Therefore, as I always mention to you, right, as a Buddhist practitioner, we should have a strong commitment to practice. So, Karmalamba said, establish yourself in the meaning of hearing, contemplating, meditating without distraction. That's very important in this bardo, the nature bardo of this life. So this is how Buddhist people actually practice the Dharma. When you listen to teachings, it is called learning. Then the teachings turn into knowledge, Only when you think about them, only, and start to understand what they mean, this is called contemplating. For example, today you receive Bardo teachings, then you just not hear this moment and then stop, forget it. Not like that. So you just bring that teachings into your, if you really want to think, we always, by the way, we always like to think. We don't want to stop, think, and just relax our mind, right? So if you really want to think about, then think about all these teachings. Investigate. That is contemplation, contemplating, okay? Then you apply the teachings and put them into your practice. This is called meditating. But as I say, it's laziness, right? Laziness, difficult. In order to do these things here and contemplate and meditate, we need diligence. That's why Karmalamba says here, abandon laziness without distractions. Do these three things. If you see yourself as a lazy person, I also found that when I feel lazy, I mean, I always feel lazy, right? Then contemplating on the impermanence of life has a great benefit. I'm not saying it's good for you, but just you, when you feel or you see yourself as a lazy person, you should find the solution that you can abandon the laziness, right? So I always, when I become lazy, I think about impermanence of life. It helps. It helps me to realize my life is precious. It helps me to realize my life is short, uncertain. It inspires me to further practice with diligence. I mean, because, you know, I mean, this life is so precious, but very, very uncertain. So that's why Karmalamba says, when this part will appear to you, there's no time to waste. When we think about the worldly life only, we are distracted by our actions. While we are distracted by worldly actions, death can suddenly come upon us. Never like, oh, the worldly, think about, you know, the worldly life and actions, so important. We can sort of skip death, nowhere, right? So no matter what. Once death comes, there's no control, you know, there's no way to control it. There's no way to escape death. So we have no power over death. And there is no certainty whatsoever about how long we will live, you know. I'm trying to kind of say like this kind of negative practice to all of you so that you can abandon your laziness. But what I'm saying is it's good for me. I'm not saying good for all of you. I'm just sharing my experience with you. So at death, we will have, if you don't practice, right? When suddenly death comes, we will have great sort of regret especially if you are Buddhist practitioner, right? If you're not Buddhist if you're Buddhist practitioner, you know all of this benefits, and then you don't practice because lazy, then you regret. You feel like you didn't practice enough. You will regret that. But you know that the regret comes too late. Think only about worldly life all the time and having a lack of Dharma practice leads us and results in birth, death, and Bardos, right? And this appearance of birth, death, and Bardo causes an enormous amount of suffering. So now we have to remember that right now we are in between the time when we're born and the time when we die. So we're done. We already born. Now what is the next? Die. So, as I said, this time we have is the most important time. That's why Karmalamba kind of like give us, you know, hey, don't be lazy. Practice these three things here in contemplate and meditating. The teachings on the Bardo are really good for people who think about this life and future lives. And also, you know, you should think very carefully about if you are a Buddhist practitioner, your process of practice, very important. Think about that. Follow the proper stages of practice. That's what I mean. Because this journey, this path you are taking, you know, journey is so important for your life, not only just for this life, but if you believe life after life, if you believe in your life, in life is a continuum. If you believe life is a continuum. So, now the Bardo of this life, if we are able to develop this three wisdom, okay, that's what we call them, three wisdom: learning, contemplating, and meditating. Then we don't have to be afraid of death. Are you afraid of death? I am afraid of death. Milarepa was afraid of death. That's why he skipped. He went on a retreat. But if we develop these three wisdoms, then we don't have to be afraid of death, which is coming soon. So if you want to practice the Dharma, then developing these three wisdom is the essential point. Okay? When we think about suffering of samsara, we wish to be completely freed from suffering, right? So then the most important achievement in this life is liberation. If you want to be completely sort of to be free from suffering, then the liberation. Liberation is certain through practice, these three wisdom. The wisdom of learning, the wisdom of contemplate, the wisdom of meditating. So practice in these three will give you some really sort of personal experience of what is possible. Once you develop a little bit of wisdom, then you can see how liberation is possible in this life, the very life, this, and very, how do I say, in this life, before you die, which means. And if you are Buddhist, this is an unmistaken way to practice Dharma through these three wisdom. And when you think about liberation and understand the benefit of it, then you wish to attain it. We have all the causes, conditions, and methods, and sport in order to liberate ourselves. And this very lifetime, if we wish, we have all the opportunities, the causes and conditions that we need in order to achieve liberation is, I will tell you, in Tibetan, Jö means causes. Dershak Nyambo means Buddha nature. So the cause is heaven, Buddha nature. Then, Ten means sport. Mili Rinchinchok means the most precious human body. So the sport is the most precious human body. Okay? We have both. And then Jin Gevi Shinin. Jin means condition. Gevi Shinin means your spiritual friend or your teacher, spiritual teacher. So the condition is the spiritual friend. We have that. And then tapne te damgakte in Tibetan. Tap means method. Te damgak means spiritual friend. Damgak means instructions. So the method is the spiritual friend's instructions. And then Driva Dzogsan Jijika. Driva means the result. Dzogsan means perfect Buddhahood. So the result is perfect Buddhahood. If you have cause, the Buddha nature, if you have the precious human body, the sport, if you have condition, the spiritual friend, and if you have the method, the instructions, then result is inevitable, the perfect Buddhahood. So then what? That's it? Result of perfect Buddhahood? No. Then then you help. The activity, Tinli means activity. Ndodanzat means like, Tokmit means like spontaneous. Ndodanzat means benefit to all sentient beings. So the activity is the spontaneous accomplishment of being's benefit. It's possible, all of this possible, because we all have cause, conditions, method, and all of that. Then the result is possible. So we already have all these essential causes and conditions. So I think at least we should have some experience of bodhicitta, experience of renunciation. Some also experience realization of Dzogchen practice, the great perfection and the bardo of this life, through hearing, contemplating, meditating. That's all. Not complicated at all. So what we need to do is practice bodhicitta, practice renunciation, practice Dzogchen through the learning, contemplating, meditating without distractions, not being lazy. That is what Bardo of this life we should do. We should keep this in our minds as a goal, this this practice can eliminate grasping, eliminate ignorance. As long as we have a grasping in our minds, then the bardo of this life will continue and suffering will be inevitable. That's what it is. So we need to find a way to eliminate grasping. As long as we don't have a mind of renunciation and bodhicitta, we are always depend on our attachment and all other emotions. So grasping, So you might think, wonder what is wrong with attachment. As ordinary people, love this world, attachment. Then you think, what is wrong with attachment? Well, when you think about what makes you really unhappy, think about it. What makes you really unhappy? What is it? What makes you really unhappy? The reason you are unhappy is because you have desire and attachment for these, samsaric objects. It's not follow an attachment based on grasping. It's suffering. The life we have, which is anxiety, worry, pain, etc., that is our daily life, right? We have some good things too, but we want more. If the mind doesn't cling to it at all, then there is an ending to all of this suffering. That is real death. If you think like death is ending everything, then this is what should we think. Ending attachment, ending suffering completely. I remember Shantadeva said that the pleasure we enjoy in samsara is like a licking honey on a sharp knife. When we lick the honey, it's delicious, but we forget that the sharp edge of the knife is just underneath. So if we are not mindful, it will cut our tongue, suffering, then we're suffering. Why? Because of the attachment. And then we suffer from it. And in order to get rid of attachment, we need to practice renunciation. There is no desire without the objects. I always explain when we're talking about renunciation, it is important, again, to understand what it means. What it means. Buddhist practice, the three things, renunciation, bodhicitta, and dzogchen, the realization, the nature mind, these three, that's it. But it's important to understand what it means, like when we talk about renunciation. Very many people misunderstand about it. It doesn't mean that you have to throw things away. It doesn't mean that. Or give them all up. Renunciation. Renunciation doesn't mean that you have to pretend you are something that you are not. For example, when you read Malariba's life story, you say, I would like to copy, like the way he practiced his renunciation. It's amazing. If you think like that, it doesn't work for you. Or if you say, I want to get rid of my attachment, you can't get rid of your attachment like that. I mean, that doesn't work either. Your attachment cannot be dissolved by throwing away your belongings or whatever. When you are attached to something, you have to examine it. That's the proper way. As you examine it, your mind understands the clinging to the state of attachment. That sense of needings or desirable objects will dissolve, and it will reduce over time. As the strength of your desire reduces, attachment will naturally dissolve. So you should not close the door by saying, I don't want to think about my desire and my attachment. When you have a strong sensation of attachment, you have to examine, investigate that again and again, not try to give away that object. Many people think, if I give away this object, because I have a strong attachment to this object, so if I give this away, then I don't have that. That's not how it works. But try to understand what is the problem of that attachment. Investigate, examine where it comes from, this attachment. What is the benefit of this attachment? What is the problem, this attachment? All of that you have to examine rather than throw things away. And when you understand the real meaning of attachment by examining more and more, then your strength of desire has less power and less interest. But you have to keep in mind that attachment has many, many different attachment, different layers, different attachment. There is attachment in everything, and that is not necessarily bad or harmful. Don't think about it. When we talk about attachment, don't think about it's bad, it's harmful. No. There are different kinds of attachment. Some are bad, some are not bad, right? There is attachment with very strong fixation, and that will cause you to harm others, harm yourself. That kind of attachment. If you are strongly fixated, you will do anything that directly or indirectly harm others to get what you want. So that kind of attachment is bad, right? We have to be careful with that kind of attachment. If you think that you have to eliminate all your attachment, that will be too much for you sort of at this point. For example, there is attachment to worldly things, but there is also attachment to spiritual things. There is attachment to practice in Dharma. So all attachment doesn't have to be painful all the time or negative all the time. Some are help, some are really important. And it's some of this attachment, something, it's going to be with your for a long time, because it's very powerful and we have strong habits, right? And also some attachment that we are attached to, we don't immediately try to eliminate. Like, how about attachment to liberation, attachment to practice? It's good, right? But you must understand that there is attachment that makes you suffer. That kind of attachment you need to examine, eliminate through investigation and meditation. Same as, of course, with your desires. There is a desire, like wishing to go on a retreat, right? Good. Wishing to practice, having a desire to take refuge, wishing to have a good friends or family, etc. These desires are gentle, simple, and helpful. So you don't have to see them as a very negative, you know. And if you have that kind of desire, you don't have to think, oh, I'm a bad person, I am a not good practitioner. Just, you know. But then there is a desire that goes with anger, a negative motivation, desire, like negative motivation. That is very harmful. Like, you know, you think, you know, I want to hurt this person. I want to destroy his life. I want to steal. I wish for something bad to happen to him, etc., etc. Those are very harmful thoughts. So by thinking like that, you are creating a very strong negative sort of desire that will develop more and more in your mind, so that your action will be very harmful. So that kind of negative desire can be the cause of not becoming a genuine Dharma practitioner. Therefore, you have to eliminate that kind of desire and that kind of attachment through practicing renunciation. So important. Again, practice renunciation is not giving up your belongings, not giving up your friends, not giving up your family and your property, etc., but having less that kind of desire and attachment inside your mind. Understanding attachment and desire, where it comes from, what is the cause, all of that. So again, the attitude of renunciation is understand the meaning of attachment by examination and having some sense of set contentment and have the intention to seek liberation in your mind. However, if your renunciation is not combined with the bodhicitta, it doesn't become the cause of liberation either, because your motivation and your action are based on a self-centered mind, because there's no bodhicitta. That's why we have negative thoughts, because of the self-centered mind. Therefore, we need to practice renunciation and bodhicitta. So this is our, as a Buddhist practitioner, it's really ultimate goal for the Bardo of this life. And this, as I said, this three practice, renunciation, bodhicitta, recognition, the nature mind, are the key instruction for the Bardo of this life. If you have this kind of realization, then you are not going to experience any other Bardos. Right? Okay. I have 5 minutes. Um, so, um, so we keep these three practice in our mind, then we're going to have a meaningful part of this life. As a practitioner of Buddhism in this life, we really have a good opportunity to achieve enlightenment through these practices. So those of you who really want to achieve some kind of human quality and the part of this life, you have to meditate on these three practices, especially to practice bodhicitta, as I always say. And for once you attend a human body, this is not the time to think only worldly life and develop some many so many thoughts in your head. Okay, that is the part of this life. Okay, now meditate a little bit this time. Okay, now let's practice self-awareness. And impermanence, right? Impermanence by focusing on your breath. We are lazy people, when we practice Dharma, we become lazy. So in order to, be able to practice Dharma diligently, two things. Self-awareness, very important, and practice impermanence. From my own experience, very helpful. So when you breathe in, breathe out, you need to turn your attention to the self-awareness of your mind. Be mindful. One of the most sort of important, the best, capacity. The mind knows everything, but mind knows itself. Through self-awareness. That's what we say, self-awareness. So you can see your mind, right? So, but you have to be mindful. So continue to focus on the self-awareness and try to relax on it so that you have less thoughts. So your awareness is whatever you are experiencing at this present moment, not about past and future, but experiencing fully this very moment. So once your mind is totally relaxed, then think about, if you just want to relax and then continue to meditate on that, that's also fine. But if you want more, then think about these great teachers, great people, and same thing about your family, your parents, your friends. Each of them sort of was born and come to this earth, but each of them died or will die. That's how I start to practice impermanent. We just know only, for example, like everybody knows Milarepa, great yogi. He came, he died. Now we only know his name. That's all. Similarly, with our lives, it's getting shorter. If you want to practice impermanence, this is how you do it, right? It's shorter, our life. It's like cow killer who is taking a cow to the place, of execution, and the cow is really closer and closer of his death, step by step. That's like one day pass, 1 week pass, 1 year pass. I mean, our life is getting shorter and shorter. What capacity we have? So we can see the death of others, right, all the time, but not our own, because we don't want to think about it. So when you breathe in, one moment of your life is starting, and when you breathe out, one moment of your life is passing. Everything is like that, changing moment by moment. There can be no guarantee that you will live until next week. So think about like that, since death is certain and the time of death is uncertain, all of that. And then think about, are you living in such a way that you can die without any regrets? How many positive thoughts? How much bodhicitta is in your mind? Do you have bodhicitta mind? Do you have a meaningful life? So focus on sort of alternating between looking at your awareness as a rest in meditation and thinking about impermanence of life, this as in sort of analytical meditation. And combined with this, you need be mindful, observe, and everything, By doing that over and over again, your meditation practice begins to turn you directly towards Dharma. Oh, I don't have a meaningful life yet, so I want to practice and develop my human qualities. Then your mind turns directly toward Dharma, and without regret, without letting your mind wander away. Okay, like that.